Alright everyone, welcome back again to more Umineko. Things are getting a little bit more hectic now that the rest of the family are now locked up in this strange dungeon without knowing where and how they ended up there in the first place. And it's also switching back and forth between their perspective as well as the perspective of Battler and his cousins. So it's good to know because it's been a while since we've seen Battler's point of view, especially Game Piece Battler for that matter. So if anything else guys, we're going to continue from there. So I hope y'all continue to enjoy. Thank you again for all the love and support. Let's do this. Alright everyone, welcome back.
警察へ連絡しましょう。待ちたまえ。話がうますぎる。盗聴されているんじゃないのかね。
そんな細工するくらいなら、普通は電話線を切断するわ。連中が本気で見落とした可能性が高い。気づかれたら、今度こそ電話線を切断されるかもしれないわ。警察への通報を盗聴されて、何も困ることはないのだし。
That did make sense. The point of a wiretap was to overhear some important piece of information. But the way things were now, they could not think of a single thing that would come up in a conversation to the outside world that could be troublesome to have heard. Kirei instantly concluded that it was more likely to be a mistake on Kinzo's part than a trap.
確かに一理あります。外線は確か0番からだ。
カノン君、私は電話するから、あなたは外の様子を伺ってくれる？誰かが近づいてくる気配があったら知らせて。
はい。Kanon raced off towards the iron bars, silencing his breathing, and strained his ears. As everyone present watched her, Kirei dialed 1110. 110. However, she pushed the hook down repeatedly and redialed. It didn't seem to be working very well.
外線は0番から？ 110番は0110じゃないの？うまくかからない。
貸したまえ。私がかけよう。
Kraus took the receiver in Kirei's place and tested various things. But in the end, they were unable to notify the police. The phone itself was definitely live, but the circuit was apparently cut somewhere. Did this mean that they were not so naive?
やっぱり無理ですか。
I mean, why would Kinzo leave a working telephone and not make sure that they wouldn't be able to notify any type of authority to, you know, rescue them? His whole point was to gather everyone here and begin the ritual that would sacrifice basically his whole family. It makes no sense. I mean, we're still under the impression that Gop used her abilities to send them into this dungeon, but based on what Kirei is saying, which is most likely true, they were drugged somehow prior to them falling into that little gap or whatever that sent them here, and were actually taken. And I'm trying to figure out at what point that did this happen, because if we're to believe that the actual battle went on where people were being sent falling over to the void by Gop's abilities, then could that mean that they were drugged in between that so that they would see the hallucination of Gop at all? Like, she's not necessarily real? And then afterwards, the drug took immediate effect and they collapsed, believing that they fell into what they thought was a void, but really, that was just them hallucinating everything. Okay, that's a lot to think about.
敵も甘くはないってことね。
Kirei let out a deep sigh, leaned against the wall, and hung her head for a while. As tough a girl as she was, for a brief moment she might actually have had the naive hope that the phone could actually work. She sneered at herself mockingly for holding on to that naive hope for even one moment. And then, she thought back upon just what was happening here. Honestly, despite having been shown such a thing right before her eyes, or rather, exactly because of that, she still could not think of that gruesome mass murder as something real. It was less that she couldn't believe it, and more that she didn't want to. Ushidamiya Kinzo had killed 6 members of his family. He had summoned strange witch-like, demon-like people, right out of thin air. and with something like magic, he had begun to kill people one after another. Okay, so here's another thing. Even if it was hallucination, you know, it doesn't explain how all the other family members were able to see the same thing they were seeing, that Kirie was seeing. Like with Kinzo right now summoning these characters, these like 410 and Gop over here. So there's that to consider. Too much to handle. Even though she definitely saw it, there was no way she could accept that spectacle.
そんなことあるわけがない。あれはきっとお父様の友人か何か。それがあらかじめ食堂のどこかに隠れていて、手品的に突然姿を現して私たちを驚かせただけなんだわ。そう考えなくちゃあのめちゃくちゃを説明できない。
But when those six had their heads blown apart, a golden arrow had flown around and around the room. That had truly looked like magic. Was that another thing we just saw wrong? There's no way it was magic. There must be some kind of trick to it. Since it was capable of smashing heads, there's no doubt it was some explosive. For example, a styrene toy plane like they sell at candy stores painted gold, and with a powerful explosive loaded onto it at the end of it. That said, at a glance, it seemed to be flying at random. Kirie couldn't imagine that such a thing could be fired 6 times, and each time perfectly hit the victim square in the head, one after the other. Surely its flight wasn't computer controlled to seek out and deliver precise hits on its targets, which would make it a high-tech styrene plane on the same level as a guided missile.
そんなバカバカしい仕掛けを膨大な私費を投じて作らせたと？あのおかしな余興のために？お父様ならやりかねないって？
A number of mysterious people had appeared suddenly out of thin air. 6 people had had their heads demolished by a mysterious golden flying object. And the 5 of us were locked away in this mysterious dungeon by a mysterious set of pitfalls, or else put to sleep by some fading poison dart. The family conference started a bit after 10 p.m. It's only been about 30 minutes since then. Probably. Those events, which took place in such a short amount of time, none of us are able to understand, nor come to grips with, even though we witnessed them ourselves. Doesn't necessarily have to be a poison dart either. Maybe gas fumes? Think scarecrow? Even if we did get a hold of the police, it would probably be impossible for any of us to accurately explain what we saw. I may only just have witnessed it, but my brain's fried, and I have no confidence even in what I myself saw. Kitty had tried her hardest to rouse herself from her overwhelming confusion just to hold on to her sanity.
Kuso, どうなってるんだ? Kuso.
Kraus started to become desperate, hitting the hook multiple times and redialing over and over. He too was feigning composure but was unable to hide his panic. He should probably try calling a different number to see if it even works properly. The more he redialed, the more the pretense of serenity peeled away. None of this makes any sense. Kirie couldn't help but pray that the events that had just occurred were no more than a dream. Suddenly, the look on Kraus's face changed.
呼び出してるぞ。コール音がする。本当ですか、クラウスさん。
Who'd you dial? It couldn't have been the authorities.
なるほどな。親父め、浅はかな。警察に連絡されまいと外部への電話線は切断したらしいが、内線は切断し損ねている。
ああ。
内線？クラウスさんはどこにかけているの？
ゲストハウスだ。ジェシカたちの部屋の内線番号にかけている。もしもし。私だ。お前は誰か。ゴーダか。ジェシカはいるか。無事か。
旦那様。ご無事でよかった。はい。ジェシカお嬢様たちも皆さんご無事です。
Not for long.
父さんなの？無事でよかった。母さんは無事なの？そこにいるの？
Kraus choked on his words. Kraus had clearly seen Natsu's head crushed, had seen her killed right before his eyes. Eventually, he was going to have to tell that to Jessica. However, Kraus began to fret over whether he should tell her this very moment and lost his words. Yeah, that's a hard thing to deal with right now. But even that was an answer under these circumstances.
母さんはわからない。無事を祈ろう。
Probably for the best that he had to lie this way. It's not a good idea to have Jessica panicking right now in this situation.
今はお前だけでも無事でよかった。
分かってるよ。聞いてごめん。
Jessica's voice was filled with tears. There was no doubt for Kraus anymore. Jessica and the others had been told everything, start to finish, by Goda and Kumasawa when they had met up at the guest house. After they learned the 6 Hope people had been killed, Jessica and the others must have been in a frenzy about wanting to go to the dining hall. Luckily, he had been able to call before they stormed off towards the mansion. Kraus was relieved at his good timing during such tragedy.
ここには今、キリエさんと南條先生、それにシャノンとカノンがいる。
Oh, she loves to know that Kanon's okay.
地下牢のようなところに閉じ込められているが、心配するな。こっちは父さんたちで何とかする。
地下牢？どこ？助けに行く。
あいにく、私たちにもここがどこだか見当もつかん。食堂の真下だと思っているが、そうでないかもしれない。とにかくジェシカ、そこを出てはならん。ゴーダたちから経緯は聞いているか？
うん。じいさまがみんなを慕って。
おじいさまは今正常な状態にない。出くわせば危険だ。殺されるかもしれない。私たちを助けに来ようなどと絶対に思ってはならんぞ。こっちはこっちで何とかする。
じゃあ私たちはどうすればいいの？じいさまめ、よくも母さんたちを、あの死に損ないぶっ殺してやる。
ジェシカ、そんな言葉を使ったら母さんが悲しむぞ。レディーはそんな言葉を使うもんじゃない。
In every replay of this, guys, you can't help but feel real bad for Jessica, especially if in those replays she lives. Up until the end, obviously. Because, God, to keep reliving this moment over and over, but having different scenarios played out before you, it's just upsetting.
とにかく、お前たちは身の安全を最優先にしろ。ゲストハウスを戸締まりするんだ。しかし過信はできない。1階のラウンジの大窓は破られるかもしれない。その部屋にとどまり、ベッドを立てかけてバリケードにするんだ。その部屋にはトイレも冷蔵庫もあるな。明日の朝までは籠城できるはずだ。いいな。くれぐれも物騒なことは考えるな。母さんの仇を取ろうなんて絶対に考えるんじゃないぞ。相手を刺激せず、隠れてやり過ごすことだけを考えるんだ。
分かったよ、父さん。
After that, Goda took the phone and was told again to watch over the children as a responsible adult. Goda repeatedly replied yes sir in an overstrained voice, his face covered in cold sweat. From there, Kirie received the phone and spoke with Battler, and when Shannon and Kanon got their turn, George and Jessica answered. And following that, Nanjo and Kumasawa picked up as well so that all members of both sides had their turn on the phone, each encouraging the other and confirming that they were at least safe for now, even if their location was unknown, and coming to a complete understanding of the current situation for both sides. They wanted to talk forever, but now it's not the time to chat. Kraus told them that they would be hanging up for now, and those in the guest house agreed.
また何かあったら連絡する。すぐに受話器を取れるように待機していてくれ。
You guys are not going to be safe in that room for long. You need to find a way out, and that's the sucky part of all this.
くれぐれも用心してな。 無茶なことは絶対にするんじゃないぞ。
Unfortunately, this is probably one of the times to do something rash because staying indoors right now is a problem unless you got that protective scorpion doorknob barrier. But even then, I don't think that's gonna work for you right now.
分かったよ。父さんやカノン君たちが無事だっただけでも儲けもんってやつさ。私たちも頑張る。父さんたちもどうか無事で。
ああ、もちろんだ。それでは一度切る。用心しろ。
With that, the phone call ended. Goda and the rest of the men quickly descend the stairs, close the shutters, and secure the strong locks on the doors. However, just as Krause had worried, there was nothing that could be done about the beautiful wide window in the downstairs lounge. If this were to be broken, it would be easy for them to get inside. It wouldn't be hard for someone like Kinzo who hadn't hesitated at committing murder to invade the first floor.
おじいさまたちは武装している可能性が高い。部屋に閉じこもるのが最善かつ唯一の籠城方法になるね。自ら密室に閉じこもらざるを得ないのは苦しいところだけど、相手が銃を持っていたらそれしか方法がない。親方様は実銃のコレクションをお持ちとの話です。そう、あれは銃だ。銃だったんだ。だとしたら恐ろしい威力の銃だ。とても太刀打ちはできません。
頭を砕くなんてすげえ威力だぜ。マグナム弾とかそういう類のやつかもな。下手な扉なら平気で貫通するかもしれねえな。
だとすればますますに部屋に籠城するべきだね。ベッドを立てかけて窓も塞ごう。そこまですればいくら銃を持っていても踏み込むことはできないはず。
くそ、そんな受け身な防戦一方しかねえのかよ。ちくしょう、うちの親父に上等を決めてくれてキリエさんまで捕まえたなんて、こいつは高くつくぞ。クソじじいめ。
無理です。あんな連中に太刀打ちできるわけがありません。しかも親方様だけでなく手下も何人も。あるいはあんな連中がもっといるかも。あいつらは一体何なんだ。
Ballard was filled to the brim with the urge to get revenge for Rudolph, and to rush out of here to save Kirie. But just by looking at how terrified Goda was, there was no doubt in him that this would be reckless.
兄貴だって悔しいだろ。なのにここで籠城なんて。ちくしょう。
もちろんさ。僕だって悔しいよ。両親を殺されて冷静でいられるわけがない。でもだからこそ冷静にならなくちゃいけない。僕たちが無駄に命を落とすようなことを殺された親たちが望むと思うかい？思うわけがない。せめて子供だけは逃げ延びてほしいと願ってるはずだ。だから僕は生き残るよ。そして警察に通報し、すべてを暴く。仇は法廷が取る。それが僕の復讐だ。差し違えてでも仇を取ってほしいなんて親たちが望んでいるわけもない。そうだろう。
そうだな。兄貴の言う通りだぜ。ちくしょう、クソじじいめ。何か儀式だ。俺たちがそのための生贄だって言うなら意地でも逃げ切ってその儀式を台無しにしてやるぜ。
それでいいよ。それにバトラ君にはまだキリエさんがいる。僕にだってシャノンがいる。とにかく慎重に行動してチャンスを待とう。 僕たちの不用意な行動は、囚われの彼らに不利益を与える可能性だってあるんだから。
And so is remaining passive too. That's the problem. They're kind of left with no choices, really.
人質か。でも、じいさまはきっと、キリエさんたちを生贄にするために捕らえたわけだろう。俺たちが助けなきゃ、殺されるのを待つだけじゃないのか。
Just like you.
彼らが捕らえられている地下牢がどこにあるかもわからない。シャノンもカノン君も、もちろんゴーダさんも熊沢さんも知らなかった。おじいさまだけしか知らない秘密の場所にある可能性が極めて高い。そんな状況下で、うろうろと歩き回るのは自殺行為だよ。
わかってるよ。それでも、くそ。俺たちはここで何かが起こるまで、引きこもってるしかねえってのかよ。
バトラ様のお気持ちはわかりますが、ここは安全第一で参りましょう。旦那様の話では相当古い牢屋らしいので、なんとか鉄格子を破れるかもしれないとのことでした。今は信じて待つ方が賢明です。
おじいさまの手下が何人もいて、みんな武装しているんだよね。
ええ、そうです。そして多分みんな武装を。
Gota had been able to say that Kinzo had others on his side, but he had not been able to mention that they were mostly all young women like witches and committed their murders using strange magic. If he had said that, it would only have caused the others to doubt his sanity. No, in fact, he himself still couldn't understand what he had seen and was doubting his own sanity. But regardless of sex or appearance, regardless of whether it was done with magic or a gun, the fact that those girls had followed Kinzo's orders and killed 6 people in an instant was an unshakable truth. If those people came to attack the guest house as well, what would happen? Just closing the doors and windows like this was surely meaningless. Gota, as well as Kumasawa, the only thing left for those two who had witnessed that massacre in the dining hall was to cradle their heads, not even knowing how to interpret what they had seen.
熊沢さん大丈夫？
Oh, don't talk to her, Kumasawa. She is already a lost cause.
お茶飲む？
ありがとうございますね。ありがとうございます。申し訳ございませんが、しばらくそっとしていただけますか。
Maria tried to be nice, but it seemed that Kumasawa still wasn't able to clear away her confusion.
マリア、気を使ってくれてありがとうだぜ。熊沢さんは休ませてやってくれ。
Jessica too showed consideration for Kumasawa, certain of the shock she must have received after witnessing such a tragedy. But her imagination couldn't even come close to the impossible scene Kumasawa had witnessed. Nevertheless, with her mother having been killed and her father having been captured, there was no way that Jessica could stay calm either. She sealed her anxiety and sadness using her anger towards Kinzo and walked irritatedly around the room.
熊沢さん、母さんは本当に死んじゃったの？
ええ。あんなひどい死に方を私は見たことがありませんとも。
ひょっとするとまだ生きてて手当てをすれば助かるなんてことはないんだよな。
I mean, if she witnessed how she died, she would know that that would not be possible.
頭があんなことになって生きていられるわけがありません。
そりゃそうだぜ。 頭が砕けちまったら手当てなんて必要ねえよな。普通。
When Goda had come flying into the guest house, overcome with agitation, he had told about the massacre in the dining hall without concealing anything, except for the part about the witches and magic, which they themselves still could not believe. In other words, they hadn't even sugarcoated the cold-blooded way in which Natsuki and the others had died. It was too late now, but Kumasawa regretted having obviously said too much. However, while lightly shaking her head and with a slightly painful laugh, Jessica spoke.
いや、むしろ話してくれたおかげで冷静になれたぜ。頭を砕かれちまったってところを伏せられてたら、私はひょっとすると生きてるかもしれないって言って、屋敷へ向かいじい様に手食わして、ひょっとすると殺されてたかもしれない。一末の希望が命取りになった可能性だってあるわけさ。その意味では感謝してるよ。
本当に申し訳ございません。言葉をあまりに選ばなかったことはお詫びします。
今はいいよ。母さんはもうどうしようもないけど、父さんはまだ生きてる。カノン君もシャノンも、キリエおばさんも南條先生もね。なんとか彼らを助けたいし、彼らに負担をかけないためにも余計なことをするべきではない。電話の前で待機してることが今は一番の協力になるかもしれないし。
There could be a phone call asking them to create a diversion to facilitate their escape, or perhaps the elders might learn their location and call for your rescue. Jessica understood that in order to act promptly when the time came, the only thing they could do for the time being was to wait in this room. George, Battler, and Goda returned, having finished checking all of the locks downstairs. Each of the three was holding a bunch of different objects. George had things like drinks, canned food, crackers, and other types of snacks that he had found in the lounge and pantry, as well as a first aid kit. All consumables that would be indispensable while they were locked down. Goda had a large folding ladder and carpentry tools. Those were so that in case of an emergency, they could nail over the door from the inside and seal it. If it came to that, the ladder was for escaping out the window. Battler had brought up objects which could be used as weapons, such as blades and poles. The kitchen knives went up without saying. The disassembled table legs could be used as clubs. And pole roughly the size of a person, which had been made by taking apart a hat stand, could surely be used as a spear even though it had no point. There was a good possibility that the enemies were carrying guns, so it was dubious whether these would be of any use. But it was still better than having them, and if those things could provide at least a little peace of mind, then they would also expect some kind of calming effect from them. Then they placed beds and sofas from around the room against the door, barricading it. They didn't go so far as to seal it up with nails. There was still the chance that Krause and others would escape and come to meet up. They had apparently set up a barricade at the top of the stairs as well. It had been designed to create a racket so it would work in a place of warning alarm as well. It was apparently Battler's idea. For that reason, they turned the TV off. So that if the first floor window were to be broken, they would know by the sound. Once the switch had been turned off, all that was left was an eerie silence. The sound of the violent wind and rain. Were they going to have to spend the whole night in such a crushing suspense? The boat was meant to be coming tomorrow morning. However, judging by weather the report, the typhoon was expected to continue all day tomorrow, and the boat probably wouldn't come. The typhoon would pass in the morning of the day after tomorrow. In other words, the boat would be coming the morning of the day after tomorrow, as in the morning of October 6th. And right now, it was late at night, October 4th. They would have to spend more than 30 hours in the island, with Kinzo turned cold-blooded murderer and his rear companions prowling about. Even with the shutters closed, there would definitely be a little bit of light seeping out. Alright everyone, I'm going to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. You know, this kind of brought to mind something odd I thought about. So, the first 3 episodes, right, were pretty, for lack of a better word, they were pretty real. Especially the first episode, because almost nothing happened there. Nothing magical. Like, even Beatrice didn't show herself until after episode 1 itself, like during the tea party scene. And then even with episode 2 leading up to 3 with the locked rooms. So I'm beginning to think that everything that happened from 1 to 3 was the reality itself. And that once episode 4 started, it was, I'm assuming, or I'm thinking for that matter, Beatrice is setting up episode 4 as a red herring. Like, basically the events that are occurring now aren't real, because what we're seeing now, we're not seeing deaths in any way, shape, or form close to being done in close to any realistic means. I mean, like, whereas 3, 2, and 1, all these deaths you could somehow explain them in a realistic fashion. But with episode 4 onwards, like, people are dying from, like, the witch girls, I don't know what you call them, but the witch girls halo shots and whatnot with the snake and everything else. It's still pretty unexplainable, considering it was also done in front of the family. And with the other deaths, they occurred behind the scenes, so it gave you more of a mystery, as well as how should I say, it could explain how people could have died in a more simpler, or not even simpler, but realistic means. Right now, this episode we're watching right now is a bunch of lies we're being fed, but within these lies are sprinkled truths. So we're gonna find out, if anything, if all this is true in the next episodes to come. So I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for being patient with my ramblings.